The sea has been incredibly unstable these days. Rain, wind, and huge waves have almost halted the inshore fishing activities for the locals. Wealthy families are fine, but those living hand-to-mouth are struggling desperately. This afternoon, Dan trudged home after having a few drinks at a friend's house in the village. He slumped into the hammock slung between two guava trees in the backyard, a cigarette burning in his hand. He took deep drags, muttering to himself, "That Don from next door just bought a new car and flaunted Lena in front of me. Damn it, if it weren't for Kieu, I could buy a dozen of those." The Kieu Dan just mentioned was his wife. The truth was, he was living off her family's wealth, so he had little say in their household. A bit more about Dan's family. After his in-laws passed away, he and Kieu moved here to manage the fishing boat they inherited. Kieu's younger brother also got married a few months ago, adding another person to their already cramped and financially strained home. Just as he thought of his wife, Dan saw Kieu's silhouette walking in from the gate. Waiting for her to get closer, Dan casually remarked, "This whole village is getting rich now. Everyone has new cars and new houses." Kieu understood the underlying meaning in his words, just sighed, and walked inside. The silence only irritated Dan further, and he grumbled, "They must despise me so much, that's why." Still seething, Dan watched as Duyen, his sister-in-law, arrived. She was a primary school teacher, just returning home after her lesson. Duyen parked her scooter and greeted Dan. "Hello, Dan." "Hello," he replied. "Just got back from teaching?" "Yes, just got home. Is Kieu here?" "She's around. I was thinking of asking her to the afternoon market to buy some things." As Duyen walked inside, she was oblivious to the indecent gaze Dan cast upon her from the hammock behind. Or rather, for months now, Dan had frequently spied on his sister-in-law. Duyen was pretty tall and spoke softly and gently, a stark contrast to Kieu, who was short-tempered and constantly nitpicking about money. Opportunities to ogle Duyen grew more frequent because her husband, Dat, hadn't been able to go fishing for 2 months. He had tied up his boat and gone to the city, supposedly to help a friend sell ornamental plants, only returning home every 1 or 2 weeks. Day by day, Dan grew infatuated with his sister-in-law. He often thought Dat was foolish to leave such a desirable wife at home, and Duyen's demeanor also seemed quite seductive, making Dan's desire swell. These depraved and shameless thoughts increasingly dominated Dan's mind. Occasionally, when his wife and children weren't paying attention, he would stand at the ventilation hole on the wall of Duyen's room and peek in. He even stooped to a more perverse act, taking Duyen's underwear to smell. At times, his lust made him no different from a pervert. Dinner that evening passed quietly. After eating, Dan slouched in the living room watching TV. In the kitchen, Kieu and Duyen were chatting. "Dan, honey, my phone's ringing. Can you see who it is?" Kieu's voice called out. Dan frowned, looking at the phone screen on the glass table. "Uncle Duyen, Mrs. Nam's son, is calling. What about it?" "Pick it up," Kieu said, quickly coming over and answering. "Hello, Uncle Duyen," Kieu speaking. Her eyes widened in panic. "Uncle, is that true?" "Yes, yes, I understand." The call ended. Without waiting for Dan to ask, Kieu said, "Honey, Uncle Duyen says Mrs. Nam is very weak. She might pass away any day now." "That fast? Just the other day I saw her chewing betel nut and laughing with everyone. Sickness comes when you least expect it, honey. What do you think we should do?" "What else?" "Even though Mrs. Nam is only a distant relative, when my parents died, she and her children came to help. I have to go over there now." "Will you take me? It's dark and difficult to travel alone." "Okay, I'll take you." Dan readily agreed without hesitation, feeling that his opportunity had arrived, a chance to be with his sister-in-law. After 10 p.m., Dan waited for his wife to finish, then returned home. On the way, he bought a box of grilled skewers and a few cans of beer. Duyen was inside, diligently preparing lesson plans for the new week. As she worked, she startled, realizing Dan was standing right behind her. "Oh, Dan, you scared me. You're home?" "Yeah, I'm home. What are you doing?" "Just preparing lesson plans. I bought some late-night snacks. Want some?" "No, thanks. I've already brushed my teeth. I won't eat." She politely declined and returned to her lesson plans. Dan remained motionless, his eyes fixed on her figure. His gaze was full of burning desire, like a wild beast eyeing its prey. As if sensing something, Duyen turned around and looked again. Her eyes met his, and she faltered, then stammered shyly, "What are you doing here, Dan? Do you need anything?" "Oh, no." Dan shook his head unconsciously, forced a laugh, and turned to leave. In the kitchen, he put the skewers in a bowl, opened a can of beer, and chugged it. Another hour passed, and Dan had emptied 5 cans of beer. In the living room, Duyen had also finished her lesson plans. She yawned, slowly making her way to her room to rest. Watching his sister-in-law's retreating figure, Dan muttered, "Playing hard to get, huh? I'll conquer you one day." He gulped down the 6th can of beer, then stood up and walked straight to Duyen's room. He reached her door, hesitated for a moment, then knocked. "Duyen, it's late, what do you need?" "I have something to ask you. Open the door." "Can it wait until tomorrow, Dan? It's so late." "This is urgent, that's why I came to you. Hurry up, it's really urgent." Duyen hesitated for a moment longer, then decided to open the door. As soon as the door opened, Dan burst in without hesitation and embraced her tightly. "Dan, what are you doing?" "Duyen, don't pretend to be stubborn anymore. You know perfectly well what I want. Tonight, it's just the two of us. What are you waiting for?" "Dan, let go of me, I'll scream." "Let go, how can I? I've waited so long for this chance, don't even dream of it. I know you're craving affection. Trust me, I'll satisfy you." In this moment of peril, Duyen used almost all her strength to bite Dan's bicep hard. Yelping in pain, he quickly released her. "You crazy bitch." Duyen scrambled back to her bed and curled up defensively. "Stop right there, Dan. Take another step and I'll cut you with this knife. You're a despicable pervert. I'll tell Dat, Kieu, and everyone else. Don't you dare, you crazy woman, I'm warning you. If you do that, I won't hold back. I'll kill everyone in this house." With that, Dan stormed back to his own room, slamming the wooden door violently. As for Duyen, after Dan left, she immediately locked the bolt and collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. For the first time in her life, she felt such extreme fear. The only thought in her mind at that moment was to call her husband Dat, but she called 2 or 3 times and he didn't answer. Duyen muttered, "Dat, where are you? Please answer me." Unable to reach her husband, Duyen could only sit in her room and wait. However, if that were all, there would be no story. She had congenital heart disease, so when it flared up, she needed medication immediately. And this was the moment Duyen felt breathless and a sharp pain in her chest. She struggled to get up, trying to find her heart medicine, but then she remembered it was in her handbag, which was in the living room. What do I do now? After an internal struggle, Duyen couldn't bear it any longer. She decided to overcome her fear of Dan and open the door to look for her medicine. As the room door opened, she felt a slight relief not seeing Dan anywhere. Duyen quickly rushed to the living room, grabbing her handbag, but she couldn't find the medicine. "Where is it? Where is it?" Just then, a voice rang out. It was Dan. He was sitting by the entrance, holding Duyen's heart medication. Her eyes widened in horror. Dan, please, will you give it to me? Will you give yourself to me first? Give yourself to me, and I'll give you the medicine." Duyen was too disoriented to speak properly. She tried to lunge for the medicine, but a sharp pain in her heart drained all her strength. She slumped to the floor, mumbling, "Medicine? Medicine?" Dan showed no concern. He leaned down, brandishing the medicine, urging her, "Well, will you comply? You get the medicine, and I get what I want. Isn't it a win-win?" Duyen didn't answer, only gasping for breath. A few more minutes passed. Dan, seeing her silence, assumed Duyen agreed. He moved closer, kneeling in front of her, his hand reaching out to grope her buttocks. "Good girl, if you had just cooperated from the start, wouldn't it have been better?" But Duyen lay still, without any reaction. Dan felt a little worried and stammered her name. "Duyen, Duyen." He noticed her eyes were wide open, mouth agape, hands clutching her chest. Dan panicked. Duyen." He ran back to his room to grab his phone to call for an ambulance, but before he could dial, he suddenly stopped. "Why should I save her? If I save her, she'll tell everyone what happened. No, I can't let that happen." He returned to the living room, scanning the scene for any incriminating evidence. When he was satisfied that everything was safe, he opened the medicine bottle, scattered a few pills on the floor, and then calmly returned to his room. The ringing phone woke Kieu with a start. She was in her room with a few relatives. Still groggy, Kieu grabbed the phone, not even checking who was calling. "Hello, Kieu speaking." Recognizing her husband's voice, she frowned and mumbled, "Dan, honey, why are you calling so early? What is it? What's wrong?" She's gone." At his words, Kieu's eyes widened, staring blankly at the wall. Her mouth stammered, "Dan, what are you saying? What happened?" "I don't know either. I woke up this morning and found Duyen lying sprawled in the living room next to the heart medicine bottle. I was so scared, I shouted for the neighbors. Now the police and doctors are here to investigate. I'm completely rattled." "All right, calm down. Let me come home right away." Kieu quickly grabbed a relative's motorbike and rushed off. A while later, when she arrived home, she saw a large crowd gathered, along with an ambulance and police cars. Inside the house, a white sheet was draped, covering almost the entire living room. Dan sat by the doorway, his eyes vacant, staring out. Dan, Kieu's trembling voice startled him.